Okay, we're talking about this class of people who have kind of separated from any particular national identity and have become these kind of global nomads who seek to impose their vision, ultimately, on individual countries. Now, the question then is, well, what is that vision?
He's telling the whole world, telling this Labour conference that we are supporting a ceasefire. And I tell you why he's doing that is because every single one of his electorate, the lefty Labour lemmings, they're the ones that are basically, you know, trying to support Palestine. They're the ones that they want this shit to end over there. So he has to show some sort of, you know, support for his electorate. Otherwise, he's just, you know, he's dead in the water.
There's a clear drive towards central bank digital currencies, which are government-controlled digital currencies. So there's no physical money. Therefore, they essentially control the value of money, and they can ban you from. You know, if they control the money, then they can ban you from buying things. If, for example, you hold the wrong political views. There has to be some degree of unity between the elements of the ruling class, because if you have a ruling class that is actually properly at war with itself, then that's how you see like revolutions begin and societies completely collapse. And so there needs to be some degree of agreement between the parties.
What's happening, my peeps? We are back on with Charlie Downs again today, and we're going to be talking about current shit that's going on.
Yeah.
Charlie.
It's great to be back.
Current shit that's going on.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah, how have you been anyway, Charlie?
Great, man. Yeah, it's good to be back. Really good to be back.
Handshake today. What's going on?
No, it's really good to be back. Lots of shit is going on, really. You know, this country is, at once, you know, the politics are really stagnant and boring and stale and grey and old and depressing. But at the same time, it feels like our country is rapidly declining, you know, by the day. You know, the kind of one of the biggest kind of scandals that we're seeing at the moment is Keir Starmer and his Labour cronies taking just an awful lot of free stuff, a lot of donations and gifts from various different different people. The one that came out most recently was he accepted a donation of £20,000 from a donor, and the reason he gave for that was so that his son could study for his GCSEs in peace. Now, I don't know about you, I didn't have 20 grand spare to help my studies when I was doing my GCSEs.
What do you mean to study in peace? What would it do? What would the 20 grand do?
Well,
he's going to be in a dome.
No, so I don't think he accepted 20 grand cash. It was accommodation worth 20,000. They stayed in, it was like some penthouse suite in Covent Gardens, one of the most expensive
Well, who's the donator? Was it the guy who owns the hotel?
I think it was the property owner.
That's different. Isn't it?
No, but I mean, he stayed in there for a period, I think it was like a month or two or something like that.
Yeah.
And obviously it amounted to £20,000 or something just to rent a property for a month. I don't even know if it was a month or two, I can't remember.
Well, no, it was several months, because the funny thing was he gave the justification of giving his son a private and quiet space to study for his GCSEs. But the period that they were in it was, you know, they were in it for another month after the GCSEs had ended. So I don't know about you, I haven't studied for an exam after it happened. Maybe his son is just particularly...
Yeah, he gave this proper, like, heartfelt speech about, you know, I made a promise to my son that he would be able to do his GCSEs in peace, you know, because we don't want journalists all over him. And
what's wrong with their house? Is there journalists in their house or something?
Where he was claiming that journalists were sitting outside his house 24/7 because it was around the period of the, you know,
the election,
which is slightly understandable, but you don't need to accept a penthouse suite from somebody.
But you would, though, innit? Like that, you're saying it like.
I mean, most people would, but as somebody who is very highly likely to be the prime minister, you know, in the coming weeks or whatever it was.
And also, it's also the fact that obviously being a Labour Party politician, Keir Starmer still tries to signal to the working class and say that he is a man of the people, a man representing working class interests, when actually he is as out of touch and privileged as it's possible to get.
That's a good point.
Anything but working class.
Yeah, exactly.
Not.
Yeah, he's a North London, metropolitan liberal who most of the working class hate.
100%. I think he's the second highest paid politician in Parliament at the moment. I think.
Really? How much? Yeah.
I don't remember the exact figure. I think the first is actually Nigel Farage, isn't it?
Yeah,
Nigel Farage.
How much are they looking like that?
I know he's got a big. Nigel Farage has got a big income from GB News, but Keir Starmer, he's got his fingers in a shitload of pies, man.
Yeah.
Oh, mate, should you just say one figure though? Because I don't know if you're talking about 100,000.
So Nigel Farage earns over $1 million a year.
I think it's 1.2 million
Yeah.
just from his show that he presents on GB News.
All right, but that's different though. What about as a politician, as prime minister?
No, politicians. I'd say they earn sort of like above average wages.
Yeah.
Than what most people.
We're
are
talking
earning.
about all of his pots.
Yeah.
But the key point here is members of parliament, they're allowed to work other jobs.
Yeah.
They don't have to solely focus their time on being a.
How do you feel? Do you think that's right?
I don't think that's right. No, I honestly don't think that's right. If you're a public servant, you need to dedicate your time to being a public servant. The amount they're earning from that, I think, is debatable, and I think the way they get to use public funds is definitely debatable.
Yeah.
I think someone like, for example, I don't know, the Prime Minister, maybe he should be paid a slightly higher salary. However, all these fingers in pies and earning on the side, I think that's got to stop.
That's mental. That's mental. You can't have two jobs and you're the prime minister. That's mental. They won't even let you have two jobs if you've got like a Sainsbury's job or something like that. Do you know what I mean?
He's not working two jobs, but he's got investments.
There's multiple stuff like that.
Yeah, multiple incomes. Yeah.
But the thing with that is, I've not made my mind up about it really. But the one thing that you do see, especially in America actually, is literally just open insider trading with politicians. Like these politicians who have a say over like fiscal policy and which companies get government contracts are themselves invested in these companies. So it's there's clearly a conflict of interest there. And that, for that reason, I do sort of err on the side that, well, actually, if you're a politician, especially if you've been elected to represent, the people of the country, that should be your number one priority, and you shouldn't really be allowed to use that position to essentially line your own pockets.
Well, if it was like insider trading, wouldn't they get caught for it? Isn't there people like investigating and stuff like that?
He goes
If
on,
only.
if only.
Yeah. But
cronyism is like fucking nuts, man. The way it goes on is just.
But you can't just insider trade though. Like that's a big crime right there, isn't it? Like
ordinary people can't, but politicians get away with it, as with so many things.
Oh, serious? It's like that. Oh, mate.
But this is the thing. Labour are just the most recent example of a problem that stretches back in politics, not just in Britain, but across the West, which is just this kind of unaccountability that our politicians have. And it's just been really funny and revealing to watch all of these politicians from the Labour Party who nominally represent the interests of the working class be revealed to be just as bad, if not worse, than the Conservative politicians who, for the entire 14 years that they were in government, Labour was saying, you're corrupt and you're cronies and you're just in it for lining your own pockets, when actually they're all as bad as each other,
This is one of the sort of key things, one of the major things that I was saying during my mayoral campaigning is they're just one big uni party. There is no distinction between them. Like you were saying about Conservatives, they're all like fake Conservatives these days anyway. They're not really leaning towards conservative politics
principles.
You're saying they're more or less saying the same shit, like throughout whatever, they just in a different way. A lot of the time they just got.
It's not even saying the same stuff. A lot of the time it's that they're the same type of people, and that's not to say they necessarily agree. If they were to have a conversation, they might not necessarily agree on things, but in terms of their background, their priorities, and what they regard good government to look like, they agree completely. I read a book recently called New Britain. This was a book written by Tony Blair, who was the former Prime Minister of the UK from 1997 to 2007. And in this book, he basically lays out his vision for Britain. And although he uses the language of, the everyman, the normal guy on the street, which is always what Tony Blair has done, it is an openly revolutionary text. And he lays out all of these ideas, these brilliant, high-minded ideas that he has for the country, which, if you read it now, it reads like a handbook that every Prime Minister since has followed. And what that's led to is the situation that our country is in now, where the economy is screwed, housing is unaffordable, billions of pounds go to on the foreign aid budget every year, mass immigration is tearing communities apart, and basically, we're watching our society grind to a halt, in real time. But that's the point, is whilst we have these two parties, Labour and Conservative, who are nominally in opposition to each other, if you read Tony Blair's book, there's nothing in that book that they actually would disagree with. Neither party would disagree with a lot of what's in that book. And then they argue the remaining, let's say they agree on 95% of things, and then they argue the remaining 5% to give the electorate the illusion of choice.
It's the same foundations, basically.
Yeah.
Same moral, same beginnings.
Yeah. And look, there has to be some degree of unity between the elements of the ruling class, because if you have a ruling class that is actually properly at war with itself, then that's how you see revolutions begin and societies completely collapse. And so there needs to be some degree of agreement between the parties. Hundreds of years ago, the opposition, it's still called the His Majesty's Loyal Opposition today, but the sense in politics is that there is, the opposition is not loyal. It's like they're kind of getting at each other when actually they agree completely on everything. But with a ruling class that is so at once, in alignment with each other, but also so distant from the population, it's no wonder that people are going out into the streets now, because they're so angry, because they don't feel represented, because the interests that our ruling class represent is not them. It's quite significantly different.
So yeah, just getting back to your point a minute ago about the all the sort of policies that they're trying to bring in and basically our country falling apart. I'm very much with you there. We need to get our house in order before we start dealing with foreign wars and foreign aid and everything. At the moment, it was a big sort of point I mentioned a couple of when me and Donnie had a little chat a couple of interviews ago. It was we're sending, I think it's £3 billion a year to Ukraine in aid. And at the moment, we're not even supporting our elderly. With these winter fuel payments, they're looking to stop them. It's we can't even get our own house in order, and we're dishing out money all around to the rest of the world.
Well, this is one of the principles. That book that by Tony Blair that I just mentioned. This is one of the principles that he lays out in that book, which is that the kind of quality of life at home is directly linked to our standing and reputation on the world stage, which in my opinion is bullshit. I think you can have a well-run country and you don't need to have your fingers in everybody else's pies. You can just have good domestic policy, good border policy, good defence policy, and you don't need to be sending billions of pounds to fund foreign wars that, in Ukraine, for example, are ultimately amounting to the decimation of the entire male Ukrainian population. Did you know the average age of a Ukrainian soldier now is 45? How dark is that? Because they've churned through the entire younger generation, feeding them into this this meat grinder, basically, and we're funding that.
It's almost like the Chinese population, isn't it? They had to stop their, one baby policy because it becomes such an aging population.
Yeah.
And anyone want to think Ukraine's got the same thing at the moment, isn't it?
But this is the point, all of that money that is our money, it's tax money, it doesn't come from anywhere else.
It's our money, yeah.
Billions of pounds are being sent to fund these wars, which in many cases are essentially fronts for money laundering or kind of propping up this, what gets called the military-industrial complex, where essentially politicians and businesses make a profit off of these conflicts. Actually, my position is, look, we have enough problems of our own at home to deal with. Britain's not in a good place.
100%.
Britain's been in a bad place for a long time. And that 3 billion, sure, at the highest levels, that's a drop in the ocean. But actually, you can do a hell of a lot with 3 billion pounds. Right here, right now. Yeah. The question really is who is in control of the purse strings. And the fact of the matter is, right now, a load of people who are either incompetent, they're actually stupid, or have vested interests are in control.
Do you think it is vested interest then?
I think it's a combination. So on this topic, I think I might even have said this last time I was here. On this topic, I think that people fall into one of two camps. They either think that the ruling class are just stupid or just evil. And I think that it can only be a combination of the two, because there is a lot of stupidity, and we have seen this, we have witnessed this firsthand during the mayoral election, the bureaucracy and the types of idiots that are employed within it, that make the system just so inefficient and wasteful and all this.
But I think that benefits their sort of evil principles at the same time.
So there
goes
is
hand
that.
in hand.
There is definitely that, and that's more the case at the lower levels. I would say is at your local council and that kind of thing. There's so much waste, so much incompetence. But actually, in order to climb the ranks of the ruling class, ultimately, you can't be stupid. You know, a man, again, to bring him back up again, Tony Blair, for example, is not stupid. You know, he's an incredibly intelligent man, incredibly politically minded, strategically minded. He understands fundamentally how power works. And what that means is he's been able to climb to this position where he's essentially above politics.
He was, I would say, probably one of Britain's best ever politicians.
Yes.
Yeah, and in comparison to Sausage Starmer right now, I honestly, two-tier kid, a pedo protector sausage right now, I would say he is I've said it already anyway, I think he's an awful politician.
Well, this is the thing, you have to look at it in a kind of objective way. Yeah. So, because there is such a, there's a quality, there's a kind of gradations of quality when it comes to politicians. Tony Blair, you might not agree with his direction, but in terms of his effectiveness, he's an incredibly effective politician. Donald Trump actually is the same. Yeah. As surprising as it might sound to some people, because a lot of people think he's an idiot, he is an incredibly effective politician because he knows he's controlled the news cycle for the last 8 years. He's been the most famous man in the world for 8 years now, Donald Trump. And again, whether you agree with him or not, what you have to respect is the fact that he understands how to play the game. And as you say, Keir Starmer, for example, is, I mean, you know, Blair and Trump are in just a totally different league. Keir Starmer is a man who is, you know, I don't think he's stupid. It's tempting to say that he's stupid, but I don't think he's particularly intelligent. I think he's very middling in his intelligence. He's intelligent enough to have advanced his way through the kind of ruling managerial class and arrived as prime minister, which, you know, requires a certain
I think his ascension was like elevated by outside forces. I haven't managed to sort of put my finger on it yet, but
for me, who doesn't follow politics, he just come out of nowhere.
Yeah,
like, so he must have been elevated.
He didn't come out of nowhere.
For me, like, he doesn't. Like, for a lot of people that like don't really follow politics, the guy just come out of nowhere. Like, and he was just like the leader of Labour. I remember when he first started mentioning it, was like, I didn't want to sound super dumb, so I was like, who the fuck are these talking about? And then I found out it was him.
Well, he was a you know, the head of the
elevated, like you're saying, though. That's what I mean.
Yeah, no, but it usually is these type of characters, you know, lawyers, barristers that sort of, you know, rise through the ranks quickly, and, you know, people who, you know, I don't know what to call it, pledge their allegiance to the one world alliance. You know, he's been very clear on that. You know,
he's a globalist. He's a
globalist. Yeah. He's even said, you know, like, I choose Davos over Westminster. Yeah. What type of nuts is that to say?
But this is the thing. So it's interesting you say that he's been kind of artificially elevated, because he has. Yeah. And actually, this is quite publicly the case. And again, it feels like I'm bringing him up in every sentence. But one
you are a big fan of Tony.
One person behind that is Blair, right? Because Blair is, you know, he is this. And to be clear, I respect Blair, and I think he's an extremely effective politician. But I also think that he's responsible directly for the condition of Britain now, basically being a screwed country.
Around the world as well.
And also, that, like, his foreign policy ideas have caused massive destruction, especially in the Middle East. But Blair, you know, the day after he left office as prime minister in 2007. Am I really that I'm just droning on about?
No. I told everyone to put their phones on silent.
Did you hear him? He probably got onto us about
my phone just went doo-doo. I was like, that's the second time I've done
shockingly
that.
Bad. Do you know, he didn't even bring me my my espresso before we went on air. He said, you come get it yourself. There's shockingly poor service.
There's no table service.
No, indeed.
I would have left.
Listen. So on this, Blair, the day after he left office, he founded an organisation called the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change, right? Which is one of these NGO, non-government organisations that has its fingers in so many different pies. And what they do is essentially sell pre-packaged governments to countries that need them. So they're involved.
Template.
Yeah, they're involved in dozens of countries in Africa, for example, who have approached the Tony Blair Institute and said, right, how do we essentially build a government that works? And Tony Blair will sell them what are called white papers, which are basically templates, like you say, blueprints for government and laws and so on. And so Tony Blair is this figure who exists above politics. He's one of these international figures who is involved in a lot of different, his fingers are in a lot of different pies. For example, when Donald Trump was negotiating the Abraham Accords when he was president, which were essentially peace talks between Israel and Gaza, as shocking as that might sound today, there were actually peace talks when Trump was president. Who was deeply involved in that? Well, it was Blair. Because he's one of these guys who just pops up everywhere, you know, because he's a phenomenal networker. He's a phenomenal politician. Yeah. And so Keir Starmer was very obviously Blair's man, right? He was Blair's apprentice. And we saw this earlier this year before Starmer was Prime Minister.
That's when I first heard of him, when you started mentioning him, saying that he's his apprentice. That's when I first actually heard of him.
Yeah, because there was literally an event where Keir Starmer was invited to speak at Tony Blair's institute at their yearly conference. And Blair and Starmer were on stage together, and it was literally like watching a training session between them, with Blair being just this well-seasoned, extremely effective political operator, and Keir Starmer bumbling through.
His apprentice.
Yeah, and it's been obvious. Blair's been radio silent on what's been going on in Britain recently, and with good reason, because I think he's probably extremely embarrassed and pissed off with Keir Starmer because he's so bad. But this is the point. There are these figures like Blair, and Blair's just a particularly public example of this, because there are dozens, maybe hundreds, maybe thousands of these figures who exist above national politics, who are these international figures who have connections everywhere. They have connections at the highest levels all over the world, and it's these people who actually run the show. Like Blair, Blair's function in the system is to essentially facilitate what he calls public-private relationships. So this is relationships between governments and private corporations. This is something else that he bangs on about a lot when you hear him speak. And what this actually means in practice is a kind of melding, a blurring of the lines between the government, the public sector, and the private sector, right? And what that in turn means is you cannot escape the kinds of politics that he wants to bring in, which is why now, I know people who work in the corporate world, and they can't speak out against the stuff that we're seeing. Like they're having these like diversity and inclusion seminars and training, unconscious bias training, all of these things, because the economy and the corporations have essentially become an arm of the state because of people like Blair. And so we are approaching this situation where the state is is involved in every area of life, which is what life was like in the Soviet Union, for example. Where there was no escaping, the eyes and ears of the state. They're watching everything you do.
And I think it was just recently as well, Sausage Starmer, that might be his name for this podcast today. He said something about the government taking back control of people's lives.
Yeah.
Like, fuck
just come out
me.
and say it. Yeah.
Fuck me. Like that. If that don't put shivers through every single person living in this country, or fuck this country, the United Kingdom, put shivers through your legs.
Wait, can you explain that though? Can you explain that?
It was a sentence. I think he said it at the Labour conference, didn't he? Among other mad shit he said. But he basically wants to take back control of people's lives. That sentence there was just like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, it's mad.
He didn't say, I want to help people take back control of their lives. He said,
no, the government to take back control of people's lives.
But that's how a man like Starmer thinks. He thinks that that's what good government is, where the government is just involved in everything and running everything. I'll give you another example very quickly of something that's happened recently. So Starmer recently passed laws around landlords, right? So he's banned no-fault evictions, which means that unless a tenant completely trashes a property, a landlord can't remove them. And now to some people, they might think, okay, well, that's fair. That's good for renters because that means that they're not just going to get kicked out of their house for no reason. And that is the rationale behind this. But what this actually means is landlords are just going to sell their properties. Because if landlords can't have control over who's in their properties, then they're not going to be interested, because landlords are not interested in risk, right? They just want guaranteed income. And so if they can't be sure that that's going to happen, they're just going to sell all their properties. And they're not going to be selling their properties to the public because their properties are so expensive and nobody can afford them. So who are they going to be selling their properties to? Well, there is one answer to that question, and that is the biggest buyer of property in the world, an organization by the name of Blackrock. Are you familiar with Blackrock? I know you are. Yeah. This is one of these large asset management firms who are involved, again, in everything. They own massive percentages of all of the world's biggest corporations, from McDonald's to Apple to Microsoft to Starbucks to Coca-Cola. They're involved in all of these different...
Banks have been just turning into landlord. You see the on the high street, banks have just been closing down for the last few years.
Yep.
You can't find the branch anywhere now.
Yep.
And that they've been literally turning into landlords now. They're buying up houses.
I see that actually. But if they're going to buy all the houses and no one's going to, or they're not going to rent, are they okay with renting them then?
Yeah.
So BlackRock's okay with the renting.
BlackRock, because they have such an untold trillions of dollars behind them, they don't care about the risk that is involved in renting out these properties. In the same way that an independent landlord who maybe owns one property, they can't afford that kind of risk. But BlackRock, who owns thousands, hundreds of thousands of properties, doesn't matter to them. And the other thing to note as well is BlackRock is deeply interwoven with an organization called the World Economic Forum, which is one of these, another one of these international organizations where world leaders and business executives come to essentially to network and to talk to each other. And one of their messages, the WEF, a few years ago put out, was by the year 2030, you will own nothing and you will be happy. And these things that we're seeing right now, these policies that are being brought in by Keir Starmer, the essentially selling of massive amounts of property to companies like BlackRock is the practical steps towards that goal. And it's easy, this sounds like conspiratorial and crazy, but it's
definitely not.
It's just open. It's just public. It's public knowledge. Yeah. You just need to read the news and actually think and understand what's actually happening in this country, because that is what it is.
Yeah, and then, I mean, talking about that again, Agenda 2030, it's not just, they're buying up everything in the world. They're looking to restrict our travel as well.
Yeah.
By the year 2030, they're saying that we will only have one operating airport.
I don't mean to go into deep. Look, so when you said that last time, I'm not trying to call you out on nothing here, but
Did you go look at it?
I did, and I couldn't find it. I couldn't find what he's talking about.
Look harder.
No. I shouldn't have to look harder because I looked at the official resources for what you're talking about, and there's nothing by anyone official saying that. Like saying the target net zero people, they're not saying that. No one's saying anything about airports closing by 2030 or 2050. So who's saying it?
That is part of the World Economic Forum's Agenda 2030.
So that is one of the things that they mentioned in that same piece where they said you will own nothing and you'll be happy. They say that you won't fly.
No, so they actually have a whole plan.
Yeah.
So by the year 2030, only Heathrow will be the only operating airport in England. And by I think the year 2050, there'll be no international travel.
I don't want to be that guy again, okay? But I did ChatGPT it, and I Google Gemini'd it, and everything, and I looked for what you are talking about, and I can't find that piece of information.
ChatGPT it now then?
I'll skip this
I'm sure
bit.
they will. You know what? I don't even know how to use ChatGPT either.
You drew for your phone like you knew. All right. Because I bought ChatGPT
just
last night.
Bring up Agenda 2030.
Okay, no, I'm going to say, okay. Well, I'm just going to delete all this bit anyway. So, see you in 1 minute. No,
Climate action.
The UK's net zero target does not explicitly include reducing number of airports. The focus is primarily on reducing emissions from aviation, though, through measures like improving fuel efficiency, investing in sustainable aviation fuel.
But that will de facto mean that working class people can't fly.
Is that just
okay? It's like ULEZ, right?
No, but he's saying that they're closing all the airports, though.
I don't know about that, but one thing that
I've read the whole chart. Look, 1 minute.
But ULEZ, for example, are we going, by the way?
Yeah, we are. Just carry on.
So ULEZ in London is one of these things that belongs to this same category of politics where it's in the name of the climate, we're going to impose penalties on people. And what this translates to in reality is middle and upper class people can still basically get on with their lives, but working class people are prevented from doing things. And so with the planes, for example, what it will probably be in reality is it will just get more expensive to fly because they will put these green levies on flight tickets, which I think might already be in place. Which in reality would just mean that working class people can't go on holiday.
But realistically, if that happens to every person, who's working, people are going to go mad. Like they're not. If you can't go on a holiday twice a year, people are
they
going to go
don't
crazy.
take giant steps; they take mini steps to get there. The same as what they're doing to vehicles right now. Owning a car, if we go back 20 years, you'd say every average household, the middle class wouldn't have a problem owning a car. The lower class probably would own a car as well. Nowadays, lower class does not own cars. You don't have the money to own a car. Did you forget to press fucking record?
No, I'm lower class and I've got a car.
Okay, well, I wouldn't. Yeah, I mean, you're struggling with that car, though, aren't you?
Struggling. It's not even-
Yeah,
it's
what
a
car is it? If you don't mind me asking,
I
Donald?
can't go into detail about it, but
I'll just tell I'll just tell everyone. All right, but anyway, you get my point, yeah. Like they're shifting the classes on this thing now.
No,
so
I
like,
do. That's
nowadays,
very interesting.
Yeah, nowadays,
Slowly.
you know, the middle class are struggling to own a car. Certainly here in London, that is anyway. With all these LTNs, with the ULEZ, with the congestion charge, with all of these things coming into play, rising costs of fuel, rising costs of.
But why do they want to take this stuff away from people though? Why do they want to take like flights away from people?
This is the point, right? So I've been thinking a lot about this recently, especially with this the no fault evictions thing. You know, first of all, first thing to answer is who is they? Because it's very easy when you have these discussions to just keep saying they this, they that.
Good question.
Well, who actually is they? Because a lot of people lazily say they and they don't know who they're talking about. But actually, it only takes, you know, half an hour of real research to discover that, okay, for one, as has always been the case throughout human history, there is a ruling class in every society, right? Because that's the structure of societies is always the same. Whether they call themselves democracies or monarchies or communist or whatever, there is always a ruling class, which is a minority of the population, and a ruled class, which is the remaining, you know, part of the population.
And there's layers in between.
Yeah, so that structure, that fundamental structure is always the same. And because of advancements in technology, we now live in this globalized world where travel is very easy and relatively cheap. So what we have emerging is a kind of global ruling class. And these are the types of people that go to the World Economic Forum in Davos, they network with one another, and they ultimately serve interests that are beyond national interests. They are these kind of international interests. Tony Blair, again, is one of these figures. He's a very, very public example of somebody who is clearly operating at a level above the national, right? So he would be a public-facing element of the global ruling class.
Yeah.
Other members of this would be people like, let's pull from the air, Larry Fink of Blackrock. He's the managing director of Blackrock. He would be another one of these characters because he has an enormous amount of power over these international, over international politics, basically. And so when we say they, that's who we're talking about. Okay, we're talking about this class of people who have kind of separated from any particular national identity and have become these kind of global nomads who seek to impose their vision, ultimately, on individual countries. Now, the question then is, well, what is that vision and why do they hold it? And I believe that it is basically just communism. Like, it's basically just old school, everybody will be equal, everybody will own the same amount of stuff, there'll be no money, and there will be nothing that's privately owned. Everything will be run by the state, which is what communism is. That's what the Soviet Union is.
It certainly looks like it's heading that way.
Yeah.
I think it's a little bit more nefarious than that. I think it's we've seen communism before. I think what they're trying to do right now might be one step beyond that.
Yeah, well, I think
That's
it's basically it's just modern communism because in the Soviet Union, obviously, they were limited by the fact that the technology just was not as advanced as it is today.
Yeah.
But today, with the travel capabilities that we have, with the communication capabilities that we have, with the production capabilities that we have, communism takes on a very different vibe, right?
Yeah.
And it is this kind of global, grey, homogenizing force that tells you will own nothing and you'll be happy. But actually seeks to bring into existence this kind of cyberpunk dystopian future. That
I was just thinking about Hunger Games.
Yeah.
Like, this is the vibe I'm getting.
Yeah.
I better get my money up.
Yeah.
But I don't think that is the answer even, because when you say money, you're talking about your pounds going up, but your pound's not worth the same it was worth.
That's true.
I need to be in high society. That's what I mean.
Money, the way they're sort of like devaluing money right now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And that's another side of it as well, is there's a clear drive towards what are called central bank digital currencies, which are government controlled digital currencies. So there's no physical money. Therefore, they essentially control the value of money, and they can ban you from if they control the money, then they can ban you from buying things if, for example, you hold the wrong political views. And we're already beginning to see that with people like Nigel Farage, for instance, being debanked, where he's had bank accounts closed just because he holds the wrong political views.
That's crazy. Isn't China do that right now as well?
So China have what's called a social credit system, which is exactly what I'm talking about.
And this is all part of Agenda 2030.
Yeah.
What's the 2030, 2050?
Oh, right, okay.
The CBDCs coming in.
But this is the point.
They are coming in. They're very open about that. It's not like you can even just go and look at yourself.
Yeah.
Our next currency, we're moving out of the fiat, debt-based economy, moving into something which is called, it's going to be called Bitcoin.
Yeah.
You must have you heard?
Yeah, we've talked about it.
Yeah.
But this is basically the China thing. This is
what we were mentioning banks closing down.
Yeah.
This is why banks are closing down, because their future is done for.
Yeah.
That we don't need banks anymore. Your wallet will be direct with the guy. You'll open an app on your phone, Gov UK app or whatever, I'm assuming it'll be.
Yeah.
And you'll have a wallet in there and you'll have your digital coins, and that's the way it'll be. And it's just direct with you, straight with the government. There'll be no more intermediary like the bank, and they can literally just control how you spend it. There'll be like some sort of, we're talking. You must have heard like 15-minute cities before.
Yeah. We talked about that.
London is sort of like spearheading that right now.
Yeah.
But explain what's a 15-minute city?
There's grounds in other places like.
What's a 15-minute city again?
So you won't be allowed. Well, you won't. The way they're trying to put it is you won't need to go beyond 15 minutes from your house. Everything will be within 15 minutes. You'll have like a supermarket. You'll have, everything you need. I don't know, a hairdresser.
What about your job?
Your job will be
in a local area. That's what they want.
Everything will be within a 15-minute radius.
15 minute though. That's kind of far. If you
so you won't need to go out 15 minutes. But the question begs, what happens if you go beyond 15 minutes? And they will have control of your digital wallet. So say you go beyond 15 minutes, you can't spend that money here. You've gone outside of your allowed zone.
Yeah, and whether any of this comes to pass, right, there is a very, very clear appetite among the British ruling class, and then, as an extension, the global ruling class, to bring in something like this, where there is an enormous amount of control over the day-to-day lives of ordinary people. And why they want to do that is unclear. I mean, I think there are some people who are in the ruling class, and this is the thing in politics, is you will always find two types of people. You will find true believers who are completely, they believe in their ideology completely, and then you'll find pragmatists who view it as basically just being a means to an end and don't really believe anything themselves. So again, Blair is an example of the latter. He doesn't believe in ideology. He says this publicly. All he believes is power and pragmatism. But I think that there are a lot of people in the kind of in the elite who do think that a better world will come from essentially controlling people's lives down to the details.
This is, you see, I have a very sort of strong theory on this right now, and it's like day by day, I see it, coming to fruition, sort of thing.
Yeah.
There's no arguing the population of the world is like increasing at an exponential rate.
Yes.
Like, when I was born, I think we was less than half what we are now in 1985. Right now, we're at what we at, like 8.5 billion or something.
Mm. Yeah.
When I was born, it was less than half of that. I think it was 3.5 billion.
Yeah.
Was it?
Yeah.
And the other important question.
1985.
I thought it was like 5 or something. No, it's 3.
No, it was the year I was born. I think it was half of that.
But this is crazy.
The point I'm trying to make is, if we go back 100 years, I don't know what the actual population was then, but it was probably less than 1 billion. Like, the whole point is, there's no arguing. The human population is increasing massively at what you'd call an exponential rate. So the ruling class are obviously, I don't even like to use that word, but I'm just using Charlie's word there. The ruling class are looking at this population growing, thinking, fuck, we need to get this under control. So what I saw in the last 4 years was COVID. They tried to get that under control with COVID. I believe they either tried to do it in 2 ways. One was to actually control people, assuming people are dumb as fuck. And a lot of people were dumb as fuck over that period. I honestly believe if they told people to crawl on the floor, they would have done it. There was a resistance, people protested, people didn't listen to it. So they thought, fuck it, let's bring in a lethal injection that's going to reduce the world's population. They did that, didn't they? The COVID injection.
Well, the other thing to consider as well is, like, that population explosion you're talking about is staggering when you think about that. Yeah. But it's also where that population is coming from, because it's not equally distributed across the world. The population growth is primarily coming from Africa and also the Middle East. But it's not coming from Europe. Actually, in Europe,
sorry to cut in. What I was going to want to say from that is the Western population is the one that is consuming this shit, like lethal injections, poor diets, all the shit that's being fed down their throat. So I believe the ruling class is somewhere in the Western world, and they're getting it under control here.
But if the problem comes from like Africa and Middle East, then why would they try population control in where we are? If it's not, we're not.
Well, this is another aspect of the agenda that the ruling class that we live under has, is in Britain especially, is mass immigration. And the thing with this conversation is, if you say this to ordinary people, and the conversation is shifting now, and people are more and more open to these conversations, but people are still scared about being called racist when this comes up. But actually, the fact of the matter is, the population of the United Kingdom has grown through immigration alone by 10 million people since 1997, which is a staggering number of people, because what you have to remember is a lot of the infrastructure in this country, so the roads, the schools, the hospitals, were built in the aftermath of the Second World War. So this was when the population of Britain was something like 50 million. And now we're in a situation where the population of Britain exceeds 70 billion. And so it's no wonder that roads are full of potholes. You have to wait like days to see a doctor. You can't get a place in schools for your children, because the population has been exploded so much by mass immigration. And again, the actual net effect of this on the ordinary person is essentially immiseration. It makes them poorer, it makes them less able to live a fulfilling and satisfying life. And it makes everything more expensive. And so it makes it easier for these organizations like Blackrock to just come and buy everything, because ordinary people can't afford them. And this is what's interesting about the global population explosion, is all of this aid that has gone to countries like Africa, continents rather, like Africa, over the last few decades. The net effect of that has not been an improvement in the quality of life of Africans. It's just been an increase in the number of people in the country, which is not actually good, because what that means is there's still a similar level of poverty and malnutrition and death, but it's just on a larger scale. So clearly the strategy that has been used to try to help those people in the world who are vulnerable and who do need aid, that strategy has failed, because all that it's resulted in is a wider scale of suffering. And I think the elites know this. I think they're realizing this. And so one of their solutions is to invite these people into Europe. But all that's doing, in turn, is dividing communities. In Britain, for example, we're seeing, especially in the north of England, we're seeing riots now because of the policies of mass immigration and the resulting tensions in towns and villages, and the crime that comes as a result.
They're putting all the rioters in jail.
Well, that's also true.
Oh shit! So that's like getting a load of people to come over and work. And then put in the people who are fighting,
and the people who complain, the native people of Britain who complain, are put in prison.
That's crazy.
Which is extremely dark. Yeah,
there's definitely a very strong hammer of law coming down on anyone speaking against the regime at the moment.
Yeah,
and you have to really sort of like take precaution to that. And
you have to choose your words carefully. Yeah.
No, I don't mean that. I'll never fucking choose my words carefully. I mean, like, you have to really sort of like think, why is that? Is what I'm trying to say. Like, take precaution as in, where the fuck is that heading? Why are they doing that?
Well, he just said it. The whole thing. That makes so much sense. That is a flipping real reason. Yeah. That's a real reason why all this stupidness is going on. And with the Tony Blair thing and the Keir Starmer and oh shit.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is the thing. This is not about like conspiracy theories and that sort of thing, because a lot of the time, the people who are called conspiracy theorists are either correct, or a lot of conspiracy theories are either just accurate, but then the water is muddied by people talking about the Earth is flat and that sort of thing, which to the average person sounds crazy and stupid.
Yeah. Well, right? It depends on the person that's saying it. A lot of the people that take on these conspiracy theories, they make these YouTube videos and they just look nuts.
They just seem schizophrenic.
Yeah, exactly. So you've got a mixture of people that are talking sense and a mixture of people that are talking shit, and you put them together and then it's just like...
but the worst part for me is the cognitive dissonance of the people that just, when these things do happen, they're just like, oh, and then just disappear into the wind like it never mattered. They were very strong to speak up about it, when those conspiracies were being voiced, but when they come true, they just disappeared. You know what I'm saying? And it's like that's probably one of the biggest problems.
Because
right
the fact of the matter is, as somebody who works in politics, I can tell you that strategies are developed behind closed doors and then put into practice without telling anybody, because that's what politics is ultimately. And that's my job. I am a political strategist. That is my job to do that for my clients, right? And to think that doesn't happen at the highest levels is just stupid. Because what politics actually is day to day is strategies, is the implementation of strategies. And so the idea that there is not some kind of agenda at play at the highest levels of politics is, again, just stupid. Like the idea that this is all happening just by coincidence and, for instance, like mass immigration, for example, the idea that it's not an explicit policy of the government is just stupid, because people talk about it as if it's just something that happens, but it's not. None of these things just happen.
Well, people think that people were being kinder to less fortunate, isn't that?
Yeah, well, there is that element too. The narrative that's sold about mass immigration is that we are somehow doing a service to the world by inviting millions of people to come and stay in Britain.
We're giving people opportunities.
Yeah, but actually, what ends up happening is just division. Which, again, in turn, is actually in the interest of the ruling class, because whilst we're fighting each other, we're not thinking about the wider picture.
Sort of like moving on from my point I was talking about a minute ago. Like, we had COVID, then we had the injections, and it's like, I feel like they've realised these things weren't as effective as they thought they were going to happen. So that's where we're seeing now. They're moving back to, rather than taking a big whooping bite out of us, they're moving back to the whole 2 steps forward, 1 step.
That's always the way it goes.
No, you didn't say
1 step forward, 2 steps back.
1 step forward, 2 steps backwards. Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's always the way it goes.
yeah. So they're moving back to that. So that's what we're seeing with the whole like Agenda 2030, Agenda 2050.
Yeah.
Everything you're seeing is all a part of that. Like, right, let's start just chipping away at them a little bit, shifting the classes. Making the middle class, the lower class, the higher class, the middle class again, and then that's what we're seeing. That's my.
Yeah.
That's my
well, the thing that gives me hope, and it's difficult to have hope in this day and age, because if you look around, it's a depressing time, and the direction of our society is not a good one. But the thing that gives me hope is when you talk to ordinary people now, people who are just living their lives, who aren't particularly politically engaged. These conversations are happening around the dinner table. These conversations are happening in the pub now about this kind of stuff. People are actually becoming aware of these things. And so what I believe is, unless the regime is prepared to go basically full like Stalin, full Soviet Union, and start like throwing thousands of people in prison and like disappearing people and that kind of thing, I don't think what they want is going to come to pass. Because I think that we've already seen the first tiny tastes of the kind of civil unrest that this country has in store if the course is not changed.
I'm 100% with you.
With these riots.
Yeah.
And the idea that is not going to intensify and get worse and get more violent with time as things continue is just delusional, because it is going to get worse.
Yeah.
In this country, we have it. Sorry, I'll just make one more point. We've had in this country in the last 50 years an example of this already in the Troubles, right? In Ireland and in Britain more generally.
Yep.
We've had attempts at assassinating politicians. We've had murders in the street for political reasons. So this is not some sort of exceptional thing. It's not something, the history of humankind is one of conflict. And the idea that that's not going to rear its head again in the near future in Britain, again, is just delusional, because the way we're going, the government are pissing a lot of people off, and those people feel increasingly unheard, they feel increasingly unrepresented, and they feel that their only recourse is violence, which is obviously bad, and I disavow violence, but at the same time, if you know human nature, you know that kind of thing is inevitable.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, do you think that Sausage Starmer is capable of, doing what you said there, like going full on
Going full like fascist,
fascist communism, just throw everyone in prison? I mean, he's already shown clear signs of that, hasn't he?
I think, Keir Starmer is a man who, for his career before being a politician, he was a prosecutor, right? Yeah. And this is a line of work that requires a very particular type of very harsh, very authoritarian personality. And so I think Starmer does actually have it in him to do that kind of thing.
Makes sense.
Whether he will actually get away with it is another question, because what we have to remember once again is, whilst he might be a reasonably intelligent man, I say that I think he's an idiot, but I don't think he's stupid. If that makes sense. And I think he does actually have. I think he wants to. I think he wants to chuck. I think he thinks it would just be easier if he just chucked everybody who disagreed with him in prison. Whether his underlings would be prepared to do that, I don't know, because I think there's a lot of people in the Labour Party who still cling to their kind of weak liberal ideals, which I don't agree with, but which might actually act as a kind of
dampener.
Yeah. I think that the actual rank and file. What I'm saying is the rank and file of the Labour Party are pussies, and I don't think they'll actually have it in them to do this. Because you look at the Soviet Union, for example, and at every level it was thugs and criminals, whereas in the Labour Party it's effeminate North London liberals.
Well, yeah, they've got the most. I can never fucking say it. The most amount of LGBT people within the government that we've ever had in history, right?
Well, that's the funny thing.
Very open about
it. George Galloway is somebody that we've spoken about a lot in the past, and he is actually an example of somebody who's like an old school leftist. Like you could imagine if George Galloway was Prime Minister, you could imagine the kinds of people he'd surround himself with, and you could imagine him he would chuck people in prison like that. Because he's like an old school communist, right? Whereas Starmer is, he represents this kind of new left, liberal, soft, progressive kind of left, which I think there's definitely a desire to chuck people in prison and start, persecuting.
I mean, he's
dissenters.
Full on fucking done it, hasn't he?
But whether he would actually do that, and whether he'd have the stones to do that, and whether his people would have the stones to do that, I just don't know. It's possible. Nothing's impossible. I mean, we're in a very crazy timeline.
This is what I'm saying. I think he would 100% do it. He's already shown it. When the saying goes in it, when someone shows you who they are, believe them, because he's full on done that. He's literally released thousands of prisoners out of prison for doing. Those prisoners done hard crimes, released them out of prison to put women and
Facebook posters,
unhappy dissenters in prison. Someone who decided to kick a riot shield. I read one the other day. This is fucking absolute nuts. A woman was asked, "Oh, excuse me, can you go in that shop and buy me some eggs?" She went in the shop and bought some eggs, gave it to the person. Then that person went to the riot and threw eggs at the police. That woman got sentenced to prison. She's in prison right now for buying eggs for somebody. Yeah. Like, that is fucking nuts.
Why couldn't you buy the eggs herself?
I don't know. I think the shop wasn't allowing people in because they were scared of, the riots, people looting and all that shit. So this woman, she's 52 years old, by the way, 52 years old, and she's in prison right now for buying eggs.
Yeah,
I think that's I'll bring the damn article up. I read it last night. I sent it to Lucinda. I was sitting there laughing, bruv. But I'm laughing, but it's not a laughing matter. This is what I'm saying. This is what Sausage Starmer is doing right now. This is believe him. He's telling you, innit? Do you know what I'm saying? Actions are always louder than words. This is what he's done.
And there's, as the saying goes, as Jordan Peterson says, if you fear a strong man, then you should see what a weak man is capable of. Because Keir Starmer is not a strong man. If you watch him speak in public, he's constantly like the way he looks at the camera. I look down that camera.
Beady eyeballs.
He looks scared. He looks like this, and he's always looking down at his notes, and he's talking like this, and he talks like this, and he sounds like a robot, and he's blah, 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 blah.
He really looks like he's trying to get everyone's approval when he's talking, doesn't he? He's looking around for someone to cheer. Like, oh, I've got to cheer. I'll move on to the next.
Yeah, he's not a man who is particularly confident in himself. I don't think.
This is what I was saying the other day. Remember, he's definitely a weak man. This is a weak. He's oozing weakness, man.
Yeah, and that actually is a very good point on this conversation, because actually Starmer, being the weak man he is, I think he would, quite for that reason, because of his own insecurity and because of his sense of insecurity in his government, I think he probably would chuck people in prison en masse. How that would end for him, I don't know. I mean, I seem to think that it would spark basically a revolution.
Isn't he doing that right now, though?
I mean, this is what I'm saying. We spoke about this the other day. Every single fucking thing he's done since he's been in government for the last 2.5 months has been like, I just see it as weak decisions. Everything he's doing is super weak. Like, as the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, you don't need to keep trying to do these things to show, I don't know what he's trying to do.
If you was the Prime Minister of England and this was going on then, so these riots are happening, what's your answer to that then?
Remember I said the other day, like, what was it? He the first thing he done, where he went on, worldwide television, and was like, he referred to these people as these far right thugs.
Thugs. Yeah.
That to me right there was
pouring gas on the fire.
Yeah, it's not even gas on the fire. You just made yourself look like a female, like a weak female. You're not a male in my eyes now.
Yeah.
Like, you don't need to demonize. That's half the country. Half the country is right.
Yeah.
Like, you don't need to demonize half the country as the leader of this country. You should be trying to say, you could have said anything, literally anything. Like,
but people are rioting in the country. What do you do? How do you? What's your answer?
But this is why, the other day I was saying, like, he's a really bad politician. He doesn't know how to play this game.
Yeah.
Like, during my mayoral campaign, I've said this before as well. As much as little man Carney's talk shit, lies, whatever, he knows how to play the game. I remember you was there with me. I was standing on the stage in City Hall. He was giving his fucking doo-doo victory speech, and I remember him saying, he said these simple words, and I just thought, you know what, Geezer fucking knows how to play the game. He said, and to all the people who didn't vote for me, I will continue to serve you. He's chatting shit, but fuck me, does he know how to play the game? Keir Starmer could have said something along those lines, didn't need to even sound like he meant it, but would have just literally, poured water on the fire, calmed everyone down. I looked like a man, half like a leader.
I don't know if you're being a good politician right now, but this will be the third time I've asked you now, yeah? But
go on.
What would you do, if the riots are going on? What's your answer to the riots?
Right, so most people are rioting because they're unhappy, yeah? Forget what the actual, they're saying it was because, there was misinformation. So they believed it was a Muslim immigrant that killed these 3 young girls. That wasn't the reason people are rioting. Let's be honest. People are rioting because they're not fucking happy. We've seen this plenty of times before. We've seen it right here in fucking North London. The biggest riots this country's ever seen started right here in Tottenham. 1985, the year I was born. The Broadwater Fine riots, they chopped off a policeman's head. We spoke about this before.
Yeah, I remember.
And it spread around the country. Again, when Mark Duggan was shot by the police officers, that was back in, was it 2011? I can't remember the exact year. Don't put me up in it. Yeah. 2011, police officers, shot Mark Duggan. All right, he I think did he have a firearm in the car, but he didn't pull it out or something. He just put his hands up, they shot or whatever.
He didn't have a firearm.
Yeah, all right, he didn't have a firearm, but whatever. Let's be honest. They're not rioting about that specific issue. People are rioting because they're not fucking happy inside. They can't put a finger on what it is, but it's just lots of things, isn't it? I'm spitting all over the place. I'm not fucking happy. So people are rioting right now because they're not happy. That's the way I see it. So if people ain't happy, let's just put my hands up and say, listen, I know you're not happy, everyone, but I'm going to do my utmost best to make this right. Whatever that may be, I'm going to do my utmost best. That's the first
what
thing.
What do you mean? So how does that stop rioting? Or riots are still happening?
Yeah, people. You can't. If someone's not happy, you're not going to make them stop rioting by saying these far right thugs, we're going to fucking do this to you, whatever.
But if they weren't getting arrested and getting put in jail, then they'd still be rioting now.
But I'm just telling you what I would say.
I want you to be happy. That's not going to stop them from rioting.
Yeah, but this is the point. Saying some bullshit just to stop them, you're just putting a plaster on, so you're not dealing with the issue, are you? Me, as a man who I am, that's the first thing I would have said. I wouldn't have just gone in there just chatting shit to everyone. That's what he did.
Well, hold on. They're going out and they're rioting because of immigration and because of these girls. I hear a lot of people saying they're butchering our kids. Yeah. And the only reason that
he could have just addressed that issue.
The only reason
he could have put that to bed.
Rioting is probably because a lot of them got nicked and a lot of them now
he could have just gone on TV and said, the reason you lot feel you're rioting, right? He could have just addressed that issue is because you believe a Muslim migrant murdered these girls. He knew it wasn't a Muslim migrant. He could have just said it was not a Muslim migrant. This is the judge, I think it was a few days after, released the name. He could have just said it right there and addressed everyone and said, but on top of that, I believe everyone is not happy. You're not happy about an issue, and that issue is immigration, whether it's illegal or legal migration. And I'm going to do my utmost best to deal with this issue.
So you reckon a speech would have fixed it?
He could have said those words, and it would have half the people that went to those protests wouldn't have gone to it after
because this is the point, right? And a line that the left always trot out, and they were trotting this out during the Black Lives Matter stuff a few years ago, is a riot is the voice of the unheard. And that's actually true, 100%. Right? And so in order, and guess who I'm going to bring up again? my best friend, Tony Blair. Something that Blair was amazing at is making his opposition feel heard. Because whenever he addressed a complaint, he'd always begin with something like, listen, I get it, right? I hear you. I hear what you're saying. I can understand why you feel the way you do.
That is the most basic things you can do in an argument.
And what he says after that is kind of irrelevant. Acknowledgement. Yeah, because once the leader has acknowledged, look, I recognise that there is this constituency in the country who, in this particular instance, is working class white Britons in the north of England. I recognise they feel unheard. They feel
I hear you.
Worried.
That's it.
Yeah,
something like.
And
that.
this is the thing. My personal opinion is the Southport murders, where this 17-year-old chap went into this Taylor Swift dance class and butchered 3 children with a knife and stabbed and injured a dozen more. That was the straw that broke the camel's back. But what these riots were an expression of something that runs a lot deeper, right? Which is this general feeling of miscontent, a general feeling of powerlessness by communities who are, again, in the north of England, not the most well off financially, who feel that they are losing their culture basically because of immigration. And then they see, and then the murderer was the son. He was a second generation Rwandan migrant, so he was the son of immigrants, but was born and grew up in Wales. But to the lizard brain, they see a foreigner. And whether that's right or not, that's up to you to make that judgment.
You never had an argument everyone's had an argument with their missus, right? What is the very best thing you can do when she comes at you?
Just wants to feel heard.
Just say, I hear you.
Yeah.
That will simmer the shit down halfway thing. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. And so when the reaction of Keir Starmer is
not if she's crazy.
Acknowledgement is the key. Acknowledgement is the first thing you can do.
You understand that half the people that are doing these riots are not, like, in their head, they're not right. Like, if they're crazy and you say, I hear you, they'll be like,
that's what the media are showing you. They're selling stories, but half the people there are just there because they're genuinely fucking unhappy.
Yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying? They are otherwise sensible people who are going to work every day, paying taxes, just doing what you'd say normal people do, and they've built up this unhappiness over the years
that has become anger.
That has turned into anger because they haven't been heard. And the first thing you can do to just make them feel better is acknowledge them, innit? Like, if someone's unhappy, you might not be unhappy yourself, but someone else you can see is genuinely unhappy. You can be like, I understand you're unhappy. I understand. And I'm going to do what I can to make it better. I mean, that's what a fucking politician's job is, isn't it? He is a servant of those people.
Whereas Keir Starmer's response was to look those people in the eye and say, go fuck yourself.
Literally. Yeah. It would have been a better response if he went like this and then sausage. Yeah. I think that would have worked out better than what he said.
Yeah.
But him sitting there with his beady eyes, these far-right thugs, like, Jesus Christ.
It's politics 101. It's basic
this is
stuff.
what I'm saying. He's a shit politician.
Yeah.
I'm a shit politician, but I can see
you're better than him.
This is what I'm saying. I can see a shit politician in him. He is a shit politician.
Yeah, but this is the thing, and this is what's going to be interesting going forward. Is as this kind of thing inevitably continues. And again, I don't endorse that. It's just an observation of reality, because these people that were rioting, the kinds of people that were rioting, they still feel unheard.
Yeah.
They still feel angry. And
this is what I'm saying, because all he's done is laid the hammer of law down on them. The problem is still there. If anything, he's made this worse, because this is going to happen again. We don't know when or what is the next sort of thing that's going to tip it over the edge. It's not going to be, God
really,
forbid, little kids getting murdered, but it's something else will push it over the edge.
And really, you look at the situation, you take a step back and observe it objectively, and it's like, okay, so white British people have been for years subject to unrepentant policies of mass immigration, where many people feel upset by what they're seeing, the transformation of their town centres and their local communities. They're upset by that because they don't feel they belong where they grew up anymore. Then there is the educational side of it, where in the schools, young kids are taught to feel ashamed of British history and the British Empire. They're told that they are uniquely and inescapably privileged because they're white and all this sort of thing. You add to that the declining economic situation, where food, housing, fuel are all becoming more expensive, so people are worse off, so their actual quality of life is degrading. You are creating a constituency of people, and also when they try to speak out, you put them in prison. And when I say speak out, I mean things where people have put things on Facebook and then been thrown in prison for that. I'm not talking about the riots.
Like what though?
Well, there were people who literally just posted memes on Facebook about immigration or whatever, who were then who are now right now in prison
because they posted a meme.
Yeah, because it's hate speech.
But is it hate speech though? What kind of meme was it?
Well, I mean, it depends on how you
suppose
define...
it doesn't really matter.
It doesn't matter because even if it was the most distasteful, awful thing you could imagine, you don't put people in prison for speech.
Can you?
That's just
is racism illegal?
Yeah,
Yes,
racism is illegal.
So isn't that technically
this is what I'm saying.
What it is though?
Yeah, no. But there were, like what Lucinda was saying the other day. Someone was put in prison. He done a Facebook post because he basically said, something about I was a Muslim person or whatever like that. You can tell the guy's racist the way he's speaking. Sure. Did he say a racist remark? No, whatever. But they said he incited violence towards a particular, faith or whatever. Again, we're really touching on sort of like, this is like grey areas now, and I think it's definitely not moving in the right direction.
No,
because but we should be allowed to say, even if what he's saying is
as well, though, we're getting our information from the newspapers and stuff like. We ain't got the actual sources of stuff.
Huh? Who are bought and paid for
but even if he said some wrong shit,
we don't know what the actual situation was. We don't know. You're right. We don't know what the thing is, what the person who's in jail for. We don't know any of the real facts, and that's.
I know, and the media are the best at doing that, but what are the best at chatting shit and capturing and cultivating our emotions. But the whole point, what I'm trying to say is everyone has a right to say what the fuck they want to say.
Yeah.
I don't agree with bare shit I hear all day long, every day, but I'm not going to be like, you can't say that, you should go to prison, you should go to... That's fucking nuts, bro.
Yeah.
That's fucking nuts. Even if he did say some wrong information that sounded like it was racist, he didn't say a racist like, these... I don't even know what some Islamophobic or some sort of racist thing towards anyone who's not a white skin color, Caucasian or whatever. He said some wrong information. People, believed what he said. They went there and it turned into a riot. I don't agree with anything that happened there. However, telling him he now has to go to prison for saying something, I don't know, bro. That's where we're getting. But we're moving towards China.
Yeah. But we're sort of getting in the weeds. But to get back to the point here is there is this constituency of people in Britain who feel that for several decades they have had no political representation, no voice, no say over the direction of their country, their town, their neighbourhood.
I get that.
And as a result, they are snapping. And that's really what it comes down to, is these people are snapping. And therefore, as we've already spoken about, the correct response to that is to address it, is to say, look, we hear you. We maybe even, we recognise we've screwed up a little bit here. And we're gonna work with you to amend this situation. But actually, the actual response of the government is, you're going to prison.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people in prison right now. And a lot of people who are not in prison that he's released. We spoke about this the other day, It's absolute nuts, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, we've got genuine fucking hard criminals walking around.
Violent
there was a guy, he got released from prison, and I remember, I think it was the prison minister or something, he said, I don't think he agreed with what Sausage Starmer was doing. He said there's people that are going to go back in almost immediately.
Yeah,
and there was a guy that went back in the same day.
Yeah,
the same day he broke his license agreement and was in prison the same day. He arrested and taken. It's fucking nuts.
Because this is the point: is the kind of regime that we live under cares more about ideological conformity than it does about actual crimes. So it's prepared to release drug dealers, sexual abusers, assaulters back onto the streets early in order to make space for people who have expressed dissent to the governing ideology, which is basically liberalism.
And it's so obvious in almost every fucking area of this Labour government. Like, I don't want to talk about this subject too much, but it was like, Keir Starmer now at the Labour conference the other day, he's all calling for a ceasefire in Israel, but at the same time he's supplying fucking millions and millions of pounds worth of arms to Israel. How the fuck does that make sense? Make it make sense. Go on, try it. You can't. You could say he wants to make a little P, all right, cool. He wants to make a little P, increase the pot of the United Kingdom. Let's sell some arms or whatever.
What do you mean? He's directly selling guns to Israel?
Directly. The United Kingdom is directly supplying arms to Israel.
Who's? What? In what? Can you explain?
And the worst part
explain the details. Let's go.
The worst part of it is they're supplying it through Cyprus. This is an episode we're gonna have a talk about soon or whatever.
How do you know that?
What do you mean? How do I know that?
How do you know that UK is supplying military bases to Israel from Cyprus?
Okay, so we have a few British military bases in Cyprus. Yeah, there's Agrotis, there's Dekelia, and there's a couple around in Cyprus. The planes are stopping in Cyprus and then going to Israel. Go look it up.
What does that mean?
I mean, this is public information that the UK is supplying arms to Israel. It's public information. They talk about it in the House of Parliament. A very big opposer to that is Jeremy Corbyn, the far left, he used to be the Labour Party leader. But I mean...
Surely this can't... Yeah, well, where is this information? Where can I go and read this information? Give me the website.
The Parliament website.
Parliament website is going to tell me that they're supplying arms to Israel.
Yeah, you can find that out.
Through Cyprus.
Yeah.
I just think we need more facts, because this is where these things turn into conspiracy theories, isn't it? We need to supply URLs with information where
there's actually I don't think the media is even reporting on this.
Well, then how do you know
this isn't information you're going to find.
So how do you know then?
On Sky News or whatever.
So how do you know then?
Because I've checked it out, my friend.
But there's nothing online.
Should we check it out now?
Yeah, we should. Let's take another short break. I actually want to, because there's no point in keep talking about these things and then we don't know if they're actually true. Let's just get some
let's do
shit going,
innit? The voice of reason.
Yeah, man. I want to know what's going on.
Okay. The House of Commons Library.
The House of Commons
Library. Like what I just said, parliament.uk. That's the first one that comes up when you write UK supplying arms to Israel.
Let me just quickly ask ChatGPT. So, on the House of what? Parliament website.
1 minute. So, they've suspended 30 arms export licenses to Israel for use in Gaza on the 2nd of September, but there is still current licenses, so they're still supplying it. And now Israel's at war with Lebanon, so
yeah, that is a total mess, that situation.
But
again, look, my position on that has always been, look, I think we have more than enough problems to deal with in Britain.
This is what I'm saying.
Before we start even thinking about it.
The whole point I even mentioned this, though, is the whole fucking woke shit.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, there you go.
Yes, the UK Parliament website contains information regarding arms supplies to Israel. The UK has licensed substantial amounts of arms exports to Israel, with concerns raised by several MPs about the potential use of weapons violating international humanitarian. So they are.
I told you. And where did I say I got my information from? The website I just told you. But anyway, the whole point is...
I just want to... I'm going to fact check some shit.
I like you calling it up on it. I like that shit. But the whole point is I was making there is the woke shit. He's telling the whole world, telling at this Labour conference that we are supporting a ceasefire. And that is... I tell you why he's doing that is because every single one of his electorate...
Labour voters.
The lefty Labour lemmings that... blindly always support the Reds, they're the ones that are basically, trying to support Palestine. They're the ones that they want this shit to end over there. So he has to show some sort of, support for his electorate. Otherwise, he's just, he's dead in the water. He's not going anywhere. So he's done this whole, all right, yeah, let's we're cool it. The way when I watched it was just like, oh my God, man, he's like a two-penny actor, like.
And a return of the sausages.
Yeah. It was just terrible, bro. Honestly, it was terrible. It was so bad.
Thing, though.
It was so awful.
Do you reckon he read sausages? That's where it was, because it's hostages and sausages. So he read the last letters.
I reckon he didn't like his sausages he had in his full English that morning, and it was like, I want a better sausage next time. And then he had a hump about it on the stage, and it just pops out of his mouth, and it fucks up.
Sausages. Yeah. That is the funniest thing.
Yeah. But listen, the point of the matter is we are governed by people who don't have the best interests of Britain or the world at heart. And that's really what this all comes down to. Yeah. Because I think that's the fundamental, and we've had this conversation, the fundamental distinction now, political distinction, is not left or right. Yeah. It's not any of these things. It's literally, do you support the regime do you not?
Are you for the global agendas at play, or are you not? Are you for modern day slavery, or are you not?
Yeah. Well, when you think about it, though, like, you think about how this country became great in the first place. Yeah, it's like the Industrial Revolution and stuff like that, and that was based on a lot of workers, isn't it? So maybe the whole point is just to bring that back in, so make the country great again. Well, so in some ways, you hate this country.
No, I don't know. This is the thing. No, but
I don't. Is that not a possibility though?
Well, do you know what? So I'll tell you what I think, right? So I believe that in order to have a well-ordered and well-functioning society, each and every person in that society needs to feel as though that they are meaningfully contributing to the national interest.
That's not how it was before, was it? When you just had people just working their asses off.
Well, you say that.
And we needed people working for low cost and a lot of it.
Like, but you say that, though. You speak to people who used to, in the mining towns up north, and they yearn for the mines to reopen. Because these are people, men typically, young men, right? Who they don't want to go to university. They're not interested in pursuing some sort of science or technical field. They want to work with their hands. They want to earn money. They want to put food on the table for their wife and their children, and they want to own a house, right? It's not complicated. That is the dream of many, many people in this country. And so when you take that away from them, and when the alternative that you offer them is they can work in Tesco or they can go on benefits, right? What you create is somebody who feels that they don't belong. And when somebody feels they don't belong, they start to get a little, it makes people go a bit weird. It makes people go kind of crazy. Because, there's a song that I really like called Everything in Its Right Place by Radiohead. And that basically sums up my own political view, is the desirable situation for a society to have is everything in its right place. Because what we have at the moment is a society where human beings are treated as fungible, which is to say they're just like cogs in a machine. You can just swap them in and out, and the function is the same, and individuality doesn't matter. But when you treat people that way, when you dehumanize people in that way, it makes them go crazy because they hate it, and rightfully so. And so what our leaders in Britain should be attempting to cultivate is a society where it's not exactly about opportunity as such. It is partly about that, but it's more about making sure everybody in the country feels as though they're contributing. Because right now, people don't feel that way. People feel lost, and they also feel like there's nothing.
How do you do that? That's like contributing in what way? Because the people that are rioting, like you say, that they're the less financially stable classes. But they don't really want to work and stuff like that, do they? Or do they? You say they want them. You need to make a society where people can have their own contribution. But in some ways, when you think about it, they don't really want to contribute.
Well, this is the thing. A lot of people, when given the option to do nothing and to get paid by the government, they will obviously take that option, right? Because it's just easy, and you can just be lazy, right?
You.
No, what do you mean? I work my ass off. I don't really actually.
But if you had the option to stop working and get paid, what would you do?
Well, I like
don't irk me because I will call you out on it immediately.
Yeah, and I'll tell you if you just let me finish my sentence. Okay, I like working in the things that I like working in.
Yeah,
I don't like working in shit that I don't like working. I don't work in your fucking gym, do I? I'm joking. I loved working here, but I'm saying that I don't want to work I want to work on the things that I want to work on. Innit? I work hard on the things that I like, but I kind of get that. But those people, the people that we're talking about, don't particularly want to do the things they should to get meaningful jobs and stuff like that.
And so there's 2 points to make here. The first is the welfare state is one big contributor to this, because when you do give people the option to not work and get paid for it, then inevitably some percentage of people will take that option, right? And then that's literally just taxpayer money subsidizing.
Those are the people complaining, right?
Some of them.
A big majority of.
I don't have the statistics to hand.
It's not someone going with a flipping a high-paying job. They weren't hitting the streets and going to riot.
No, well, this is the point. Well, it was typically.
There's a mixture of people. That's the point.
It was a mixture of people. It was generally working-class people. Some of whom were probably on benefits. I'm not. I don't know. Again, I don't know the percentages.
Some of them there were anarchists, just wanted to cause trouble.
Yeah. But some of them would have just been like brickies. Just normal guys.
You've been to a protest before. Yeah. You've seen there's a very wide range of people.
Yeah. But the point is,
there's a lot of cuckoos in there.
There's a lot of cuckoos. But the whole point is you'll be walking down the road, and I've literally had this before. There'll be a neuroscientist talking to you on literally budging your left shoulder, and there'll be a person standing next to there with a beer can, like land of freedom, pouring beer over it. Like I've literally had that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like if say, all right, let's say we did it in the way that the rioters wanted it, got rid of all the immigrants and whatever, and then there's all these jobs here which like are going, like, basically people aren't doing them and stuff like that. There's no one working in KFC anymore.
Well, but this is the point. There is this idea that, you know, that British people don't want to do the jobs that typically are taken by migrants, like, you know, cleaning toilets and working at KFC and doing, you know, Uber drivers and all that sort of stuff. But actually, quite frankly, if you don't give people the option, if they have to either work or go hungry, then they will take those jobs. And that's not like a nice thing, but that's more desirable than these people literally just taking
so you're saying stop
money.
the benefits and shit as well?
That's one part.
Partially,
yeah, that's one part.
Okay,
because there are over 6 million people in Britain on benefits. So those are people, and that's not to say that these people are just useless. These are people who are perfectly functional, at, you know, for the most part. Some of them are disabled, and that's a different issue.
Yeah.
But the people who can work but refuse to and take benefits, you know, those are people who should be working, right? And that there's no reason for the taxpayer to subsidise their lazy lifestyle. And so, you know, one part of the solution is taking benefits away from those people, because then you force them to work. And even though they might not want to work, and even if the job that they're going to take might not satisfy them hugely, it's better for everyone that they are working.
But do you know what, though? It is actually hard.
And just a very quick one last point. The fundamental point here, and this is a point that a writer called Thomas Carlyle, who I love, makes all the time, is work is good for you. Work is good for your character. If you are just sitting around, lazing around all day, that makes you a weak person. Whereas work, no matter what sort of work, strengthens you.
Do you know what I was going to say?
Written on the Berlin Wall, it was work will set you free or something like that. Yeah.
Well, maybe not working in like KFC or something though.
But it's better than sitting. It's better than sitting around like drinking.
That's true.
Or smoking
That's the truth. That's the truth.
Yeah.
All right. But what I was going to say is, you know, so a long time ago, like it must have been about when I was in my early 20s, I was on benefits,
Sure.
And back then, it was hard to be on benefits. You can't be on benefits for too long because they're putting pressure on you to find a job. They're like, get a job, hand out this many applicants. Like the way I had to like do it, like, you know, you have to look for a job or you won't. So I can imagine that it's probably worse now, right? It's, or not worse as in like it was worse for me because I was younger, but I'm saying like it's harder to just be on benefits.
I don't know about that, you know.
Should we try and go on benefits? Should I try and go on benefits and see how easy it is? Yeah.
I can't. I don't want to do that. But the whole point, no, because I'm hearing because now back I remember it used to be called JSA.
Yeah, job seekers allowance.
Yeah, and I still call it that when I'm talking about.
Yeah, what's it called now? Universal credit.
Universal credit. Yeah. So people they tell me it's the gist I'm getting is that it's actually quite easy now because they're doing a lot of like online check-ins and stuff like that. So you don't even need to go into the job centre anymore and stuff like that. And this
really?
There's lots of little, you know, outs you can do now.
Oh shit!
My sparks off a little bit.
Getting ideas now, Donny. Yeah. But just to finish this point though, so on the one hand, you cannot allow people to just be lazy and have the taxpayer subsidise their lazy lifestyle because they can work but they just don't want to. On the other hand, in a first world country like Britain, there should be no homeless people on the street at all. Right? That's something I really firmly believe is we are more than capable of using taxpayer money to fund centres where, and to be clear, I'm talking about maybe police officers or some other kind of officer. If there's a homeless person on the street, they get picked up and they get taken to a centre, right? You should not have, I mean, as I was walking here today, I saw multiple homeless people, right?
Yeah, I mean,
and a lot of these people, they just need help. Like they're drug addicts or they are just, you know, completely screwed. And it does, you know, and any self-respecting nation looks at that and thinks, right, we need to solve this problem.
If we've got $3 billion a year for Ukraine, we should have 500,000. We could do something, even with 500,000, we could... You know, buy I don't know, like, I mean, the government owns plenty of buildings, but we could finance that building, put a few staff in there, a few beds, bam, sorted.
But this is the point. This is not about like punishing people and oppressing people. It's about understanding what's best for people. Because ultimately the role of a leader, the role of a true leader, is to have the best interests of his people at heart. And if you have the best interests of your people at heart, you recognise that, one, it's not good to facilitate lazy lifestyles among people. But also, it's not good for people to be, you know, absolutely destitute and screwed in a way that they can't themselves help. So you have to have both. But then the other angle of this, to get back to the original point, which is how do you solve this feeling of meaninglessness and lack of belonging among British people? Well, the other thing is we've completely deindustrialized our country. You know, we hardly produce any of our own food. We don't produce any of our own steel or other materials. The majority of money and work...
That's business though, isn't it?
Yeah. But the majority, our number one export is financial services, all of which, as you know, come out of the 1 square mile of the City of London. So that is where basically our entire industry as a country comes from. And what we should actually have is a condition of what in political theory is called autarky, which is where a country is completely self-sufficient and doesn't need to rely on foreign imports for anything essential. Right? Because so much of our energy we import from the EU, so much of our food we import from the EU and America, so much of our materials we buy from China, right? All of these things, we could be producing them themselves. And hello, this is Britain. We used to have a globe-spanning empire, and we were the best at producing all of these things. And so now what we need is a reindustrialization of the country to give purpose and meaning to so many of these people who are either on benefits or working shitty jobs that they hate. Because I genuinely believe that a lot of, for example, the people rioting, they would be happiest if they were working in a mine or in a field or something like that, because that's what that's what would be satisfying and fulfilling. Right?
Well, but the thing is, it's business, isn't it? Like, so it's like who's giving me the best for my buck? Like, who's giving me the best deal for my money? Like, so if you're trying to buy things from over here. It makes sense to export stuff. So that's something that can
export is different.
I mean, import stuff. It makes sense to import stuff if you're trying to make the most out of your business.
Yes.
So,
but the point is, what you're thinking, the way you're thinking in there is quite capitalist, right? Not to sound like a socialist, but like the capitalist mind just sees profit and loss. Right? And that is how a lot of our ruling class think. They do think in terms of profit and loss in all areas. But actually what we should be thinking, my personal fundamental economic principle is the economics should serve the nation and not the other way around. Because the condition we have right now, the situation we have right now, is the nation serves the economics. The economics is the most important thing. Profit and loss is the most important thing. When actually, what should be the most important thing is the well-being of the nation. And the purpose of the economy is to facilitate that, not the other way around.
100%. But I just like that point we raised there, like with, for example, homelessness. There's literally just a little bit of better management with our money, the taxpayers' money, that could solve a wide array of problems here. And that would probably, I'd say, stop the riots overnight.
Yeah.
Just a little bit of better management.
Yeah.
So, which leads me on to my next point, which is which I was saying a lot during my mayoral campaign, is that these problems, if they wanted to solve them, they could. They'd solve them overnight.
Yes, this is totally true.
That they don't want to solve them.
Yeah.
It's always problem solution. And what is the solution? The solution is, like what we were discussing earlier, we're heading towards this communism, or what I like to call modern day slavery.
Yeah. But this is the point, and it all comes down to political will. There's not been a leader in Britain with the political will to solve these problems for decades. I can't even think of one that has had that. And so what Britain is really waiting for is for that leader figure to emerge.
Well, he did. I think Jeremy Corbyn might have been that person. I mean, he's so far on the left. I don't know where it would have headed or whatever, but I think he would have possibly have, solved definitely a handful of the problems we're talking about.
Yeah. I've got a mixed opinion of Jeremy Corbyn. I don't hate him. I respect that he is a man who, even in the halls of power, having been there for as long as he has, still holds fast to his personal convictions and principles. That's not something you can say of a lot of politicians. But I don't. He is like an old school socialist in a way that is just not. It just doesn't work. Doesn't work, and it wouldn't work in the modern world with the kinds of economies that we have. With that being said, I respect his. He does have a clear desire to help people, I think,
especially here in the UK as well.
I do respect.
I think he'd solve things like homelessness, sleeping rough, all this. Foreign aid and international wars would have. Well, that's his main selling point. Is he would have ended that straight away. A lot of the problems we're talking about, he would have probably solved them.
And actually, I would take a Corbyn over a Starmer any day.
100%.
Any day of the week.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So is he's for reform, isn't it?
No, Corbyn's independent. He was the leader of the Labour Party.
Before Starmer.
He's a very far leaning on the left politician.
Yeah.
But right now he was. I think was he expelled from the.
Yeah, he was kicked out. Yeah.
Kicked out of the Labour Party, and now he's.
What am I talking
about? He's an independent MP now for Islington.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
He's a local boy.
So if not Starmer, who?
Well, this is the fundamental question.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah. There's a number of contenders. So one that obviously springs to mind is Nigel Farage, because he is somebody who has been in British politics for decades.
That's who I meant.
Yeah. So he's the leader of the Reform Party. He's somebody who's been in British politics for decades. He's been effective in that time. He, basically led Brexit. That was his life's work. He's now, for the first time ever, an elected MP in Parliament for the Reform Party. And I actually went to their conference, the Reform Conference, over this past weekend, and heard him speak. I interacted with him in person, as I have a number of times. He's one option. Another option
is his personal security guard, isn't it?
Yeah. Really?
Big Polish guy in the gym. He's my friend. Yeah, Arthur. Yeah, so Arthur was his driver, his personal security.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Farage is one option. Another option is whoever ends up leading the Conservative Party. Now, there's 4 contenders at the moment. Leading is the guy in the lead is a guy called Robert Jenrick, who is campaigning on essentially a platform that's competing with Reform. Yeah, it's quite right wing, it's quite anti-immigration, all this sort of thing. He's clearly trying to recapture the voters that the Conservative Party lost to Reform at the election. Beyond that, in mainstream politics, there's basically nobody.
But why Farage though? Like you said,
because he's the leader of the Reform Party.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's
Reform's like the new rebranded Conservatives.
Yeah, there's absolutely no doubt that Farage, and he has basically said this, Farage wants to be Prime Minister, and he wants to be Prime Minister in 2029 after the next general election. I've done work with the Reform Party, as you guys know, and they have a lot of problems. That's one thing to say. They're a new party. They're a young party.
What kind of problems do they have?
One way that I've heard it put is they are trying to build a plane whilst they're in midair, right? So they are a party that has national profile now, has elected MPs in Parliament, but which really is still behaving like a tiny local party. So what they're trying to do at the moment, and what I've been involved in, is the rollout of their national infrastructure to kind of, basically prepare for the next election, prepare for campaigning at the local level and this sort of thing. And they seem to be doing that quite effectively. I think the strategy that they're employing is quite good. The question really is one of longevity, in my opinion, because ultimately the Reform Party it's the Nigel Farage show, right? And this is the case.
He's I know, because he was like it was a company, wasn't it? And he was basically the
controlling shareholder. Yeah,
but now he's basically taking it.
No, that's true. That's true. But in a lot of ways, the question. And I like Nigel. I think he's an effective politician. I think he's a very, very entertaining man. I think he's a great presenter, great campaigner. But there has to be an understanding of the fact that it cannot. This is a movement that's bigger than Nigel is, and it can't begin and end with him. Right? There has to be some kind of plan for what happens after he leaves, which is going to happen. He said that he's going to come back for 5 years, and if that's it, there has to be some kind of plan in place to basically continue after he leaves. And at the moment, there doesn't seem to be any sort of recognition of that fact. So that I would say is.
Well, isn't he going to sort out the stuff that you've got problems with, and then you start making plans on top of those plans? Don't you need those things to get sorted out first?
You can do both, and this is the way they should.
Is it 5 years enough to plan for the?
Well, I mean,
for now,
5 years is a long time, but in politics, I mean, a hell of a lot can happen in
what's Nigel Farage going to do that's going to make you?
Have you not seen many of Reform's policies on them?
Yeah, I have, but we're just
it was literally like a breath of fresh air looking at it. If you had to choose between Reform, Labour, or Conservatives, there is no choice. For me, anyway.
Yeah.
So you choose Reform.
Yeah. If I had to choose, my personal opinion is I don't agree with party politics anyway. Charlie knows that anyway. But if I had to choose between them three, I'd honestly say there's no comparison between the three.
Yeah. I mean, look, I'm kind of with you. I think that a lot of party politics is just a waste of time. And again, what really matters is action and getting things done. I mean, to be honest, something that I've said recently is the most kind of desirable situation for the British right to be in is essentially one where the Conservative Party and the Reform Party are in an arms race against each other, where they're both trying to outdo each other at every opportunity. Because the thing with the left is the left don't police to their left. Does that make sense? So if you've got, say, I don't know, somebody who's like a moderate social democrat who's kind of, they're in favour of welfare and they're in favour of gay rights and they're in favour of feminism and all this sort of thing. Yeah. And then you've got a hardline communist way far to their left. That moderate social democrat will not disavow the communist. Whereas on the right, basically the function of the centre-right is to gatekeep against anybody further to the right. And what that means is that the right, the Conservative Party has been neutered over the last few decades, and it just doesn't really have any principles at all. And it's meant that a party like Reform has inevitably emerged. And so what should happen now is the Reform pressure the Conservative Party from the right, and the Conservative Party, if they have any sense, will listen and respond and basically try to incorporate the kinds of ideas that Reform are selling to people. Because only then will there be any kind of meaningful opposition to Labour, but also to the regime in general.
I think that makes a lot of sense what you just said there about, the left don't police the left, so to speak, or whatever, because we've seen over the last, I think, 20 years or whatever, the left has just gone even further left and left and left. And like here in London, the left stronghold or whatever, it's just gone so far left now. It's just like, I can't even like talk to people where it's just like they're living in an alternate universe or something like.
Whereas the right, and another problem with the right in general is they are still, so many of them, and the reform in particular have this problem massively. They're still so scared of being called racist. Like they're still so scared of being called names. Let's clear up
some of this right now. What you see with Reform, what happens when they come into like power, and then what happens to immigration, and what happens to the people that are here that are like they're not white, and they are born in the UK, but they're not white, and like let's say their aunties and whoever's come from their country and whatever. Like what happens? What's the deal? What's going on?
What Reform have committed to is stopping immigration, basically. Because again, what you have to keep in mind is last year 1.2 million people were granted visas. So that's 1.2 million new people, first generation immigrants, who've come to the country and who are, they don't really have any connection to Britain. So what Reform have committed to do is put a stop to that. So they're not, Reform are not talking about like deporting people. Reform are not, and Nigel Farage has said this. He said he's not interested in deportations. He just wants to stop. It's like a bath, right? Nigel just wants to turn off the tap. Okay, he's not interested in pulling the plug. He just wants to turn off the tap to stop the incoming people, which is, I think that's absolutely necessary because that's the first step to getting a handle on so many of the other problems that I've already spoken about in terms of infrastructure, healthcare, education, all of these sorts of things, where we can and housing, most importantly, where we can catch up with the demand that has kind of arisen as a result of immigration. Because if the policies, if the scale of immigration is allowed to continue, then all of these things are just going to get worse. Therefore, Reform's policy is, okay, let's just stop it and take a breather, take stock, and see if we can actually get a handle on all of this stuff, which I think is totally sensible.
I think people are worried, though, that, you can stop the tap here, but then what happens once, time's gone past and the tap stop? Is it time to start cleaning the bath? Is that what's going to happen?
Well, I don't know, honestly. Like I said, Nigel Farage...
That's what the worry is, though, isn't it? Because it's
that is what people sort of think about Reform. I don't think Nigel Farage has any desire to do that, and I don't think the actual kind of internal team at Reform have any desire to do that either. And people can make of that what they will. I personally think that one thing that has to happen is every foreign criminal who's in prison right now should be deported, because there's 10,000 of them.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and that's just sensible. Like any country, that's not a matter of ideology. That's just national. That's just sensible. Right? That's just public security and national interest.
But they do get deported, a lot of them. I know,
they do, but it's very slow. But it's very slow, right? And that's part of the problem, because again, Keir Starmer, we've seen recently, has released 2,000 some of whom are violent criminals early to make space for people that he wants to put in prison. Now, you could clear out 10,000 spaces in prison and alleviate the burden by deporting the 10,000 foreign criminals who are currently in prison, right? That's just sensible. And anybody who disagrees with that is either not thinking clearly or they have, nefarious sort of ideas.
I do kind of agree with just not giving people people shouldn't be able to come on to this country and come on benefits.
Yeah, that's another huge problem. That's another thing that happens. Well, let me give you a statistic, right? So in order for an immigrant to break even, as it were, so in order for an immigrant to earn enough money to be contributing, to be a net contributor to the economy instead of a net taker, they have to earn about £39,000 a year. And only 29% of immigrants achieve this, which means that the remaining 71% are net takers. Okay, so this is not people that are on benefits. This is people who are working. Some of them are on benefits. Some are working. But the point is, even if they are working, a lot of immigrants are taking from the taxpayer as opposed to giving.
How?
Right?
In what way though? Like through NHS and stuff?
Yeah, because in this country we have a lot of public services that are funded by the taxpayer, like the NHS, like the education system, everything that your taxes go on, right? Road maintenance and all these kinds of things. Like I say, in order to be a net, and this doesn't just apply to immigrants, this applies to everybody. In order to be a net contributor, you have to be earning £39,000. And as I said, to repeat it, only 29% of immigrants achieve that. Right?
What's the percentage of people that are here that achieve that?
I actually don't have that statistic off the top of my head. I don't know, but the point is, even if it was less than that in the native population, there's no reason to bring in more people who are going to be net takers, because all that's going to lead to is a degradation in the quality of public services, which is what we're seeing.
What about like just
bringing in skilled workers?
Yeah. That was the whole point in the first place, isn't it?
Yeah.
But what about just the idea that you just need to help people?
Well, I mean, and that's.
I'm not disagreeing. Right? I just want to know where you stand. No.
Right? And that is a really important point.
You know, people come. Let's think of the Hunger Games. You know, they're coming from the outside layers, and they want to. They want to come. Yeah, exactly. They want to come to the highest. They want to come to high.
No, listen. This is something that people on the right don't address enough. Is that like humanitarianism is totally legit. Like you should. I mean, I'm a Christian, right? So you should care about the well-being of people, because we're all made in God's image, and we all have a kind of divine spark in us. However, personally, I don't think that the best solution to helping the vulnerable and the needy is to invite them into your country, because all that does is drag down the quality of life of the people who are already here. Because inevitably, it's their tax money that's going on, and it basically. This is the thing with the idea of equality, right? Is what people think equality means is, one person's here, one person's here, and equality is they level out at the middle. But actually what equality is in every single time and place is one person's here, and the person who's here is dragged down to that level. Yeah. And this person doesn't get any better, this person just gets worse. And that's what happens. Yeah, that's what happens as a result of this kind of humanitarian approach to mass immigration. Yeah. And so what I believe is the most effective way of actually addressing the fact that there are vulnerable people in the world who need help. And as a first world self-respecting nation, we should maybe be doing something about that. The most effective way to do that is not to invite them into our country, but it's also not to give these countries billions of pounds a year, because inevitably what happens when we do that is that money just goes into the pockets of corrupt politicians in these countries, and it doesn't improve the quality of life in any way, shape or form. Now, what I'm going to say now is going to be very controversial, but the British Empire did more good in this regard than any regime since. Because what the British Empire did was, sure, it invaded countries and colonized countries, but what it then did was build infrastructure, create educational systems, and essentially create order, right? Yeah. It imposed a British style of governance on these countries that didn't have it before. Many of these countries were, they weren't even countries before the British came there. They were just sets of tribes, right? Yeah. In Africa, for example. And what the British did when they came, look, the British ruled over these people, okay? And you can, there's a variety of opinions on whether that's right or wrong. But what you can't deny is the infrastructure that the British built and the kinds of things in terms of education and technology that they built benefited the people there, right? And what's happened since the British left a lot of these places is they have gone to shit.
I think I know what you want. You want to raise the British Empire.
British Empire 2.0, baby.
You want to be on a horse with a sword rolling down the street.
If we are...
I agree with you. That's a good point, because me and my girl, we do talk about some stuff like that. So we talk about like because we're from a pretty shit area, and what we did notice is that people coming from like other countries and just not willing to embrace the culture itself, like the English culture, just more like impose their cultures. That's kind of mad, you know.
And this again,
that's a mad thing. That's so ignorant to go and do that. I could never imagine going to a country and just being like like, just ignoring all of the rules of the country and just doing my own shit. Like, that's a mad thing.
Back to the rioters, that's the experience that these people have had, is they've had mass immigration to their towns of people who don't give a shit about the culture, don't give a shit about the history, don't care about the people, who've just come with their own cultures and imposed it on these towns. And and I've had this experience myself where I'm from. I've looked around my town centre and thought, I don't recognise this place. I grew up here and I don't know where I am. You know,
the worst thing is the trains. If I'm quite honest, I know Nigel Farage said like he said something about like banning it. You're not allowed to speak. What did he say? You can't speak on your phone. What's that rule that he said?
Yeah, on like speakerphone.
Yeah. So
who said that?
No, Nigel Farage said something like that, didn't he?
I think he
said something like he wants to ban being able to speak in a different language on your phone on a train. I was like, that's the best thing because that pisses me off the most.
It's just rude.
Like I don't know what I sound like right now. Like some. I don't know.
You sound like me.
Yeah, I'm you, innit? Right, but I'm Charlie now. All right, but they'll be on the phone and just be talking in some mad language, but shouting at their phones on like in the phone's quiet. It's like, bruvs, do you know where you are? Like you're not in like. I know kids do that as well, but they're just ignorant little dickheads, But like,
so what are they supposed to do? Just not speak then?
No, you're on the phone, Number one, put your headphones in, Number two, maybe save the phone call for off the train. And number three, you don't need to have the conversation on the train right there and then. You know, I'm talking about a FaceTime, where the voice is coming out of the phone and he's shouting into the phone, and that happens every single train journey.
I know, but come on, let's be honest.
That pisses. I'm sorry, it's just a manners thing. Like I think I was raised. All right,
it's a very English thing to say.
It's manners.
But you can't ban something like that. That's fucking.
I would love it if they did, though. I would love it if they did. I would love it if they did it on buses and on trains and maybe even public in general. Because it's annoying. Speak at a nice volume with headphones in. That's it. That's what it draws me. I don't know if that's my autism or whatever, but it just fucking runs through my.
What if that person was having an emergency?
Then I would understand, but it better sound like
you don't understand because they're speaking in Chinese.
But what's an emergency though?
Get
off the train. Get off the train.
Their family. How can they get off the train? It's moving
on the next stop.
All right, they might.
Say hello, I'm gonna be back.
They might. But you just went and told them to shut up.
No. I can hear if they go, no, I'm on the train right now. Let me call you back when I get off the train.
They're talking in Chinese.
No, but I could hear that split. I'm not talking about small little brief conversations. I'm talking about conversations all the way from one side of London to the other side.
Okay.
Like non-stop.
So Donnie, if I'm hearing you right, you're in favour of mass deportations because you don't like people speaking on the speaker on their phones on the train.
Chinese.
Well, I'm in favour of something a little bit different. I think I would like it if people came to the country and they had to like learn how to live in this country, as opposed to that's all I would really.
That's what we've been promised for literally the last 30 years is the ideal of assimilation, which is what you're talking about. But it's not happened, and part of the reason it's not happened is because when you import 1 million people, there's no incentive to assimilate because there's nothing to assimilate into, right? Whereas if it's like, you imagine Britain's a country of 50 million people, let's say, one person from India comes, they have to assimilate. There's no option. You can't just, if you're one person on your own, you can't live your own culture because it's just impossible. Whereas if Britain's a country of 50 million and then 1 million Indian people come, and quite often people obviously group together, as is human nature, as is completely normal, there's no need to assimilate. And so that's why it's a question of scale, because the scale has been the problem.
Yeah, I get that.
But back to the point that we were just talking about. If Western countries and Western governments want to get real about helping people, then they will recognise that mass immigration is not the solution to that, because it immiserates their country and it makes the people of that country angry. But also, billions on foreign aid is not the solution either, because it doesn't work, because it just goes into the pockets of the corrupt politicians who run these countries. So actually, I'm not saying I endorse this, but I'm just saying that if they were being real about this, if they were looking at the situation seriously, they'd recognise that the most effective way to raise the people of the people in these countries who are really destitute and who are very vulnerable and whose lives are terrible and whose the child mortality rate is really high, levels of disease is really high, levels of malnutrition is really high, the water is dirty, the food is terrible and scarce and all this sort of thing. The most effective way to help those people is by governing their countries.
So you really do want the British Empire to come back?
I'm not saying I want that. I'm just saying that that's the truth. Like, and the question is, okay, do we care? do we care about helping people, or don't we? And if the question is yes, that is the answer. If the question is no, then we shouldn't be doing it. Then it's none of our business. And to be honest, for the time being, I'm in the none of our business camp, because I think we are such a screwed up country. Like, at home right now.
We're not in a position to start helping other people at the moment.
Yeah, we're not. We're not. And that's why it annoys me when people say, oh, we should be inviting in more asylum seekers and more refugees. And it's like, look, I understand the vision of being a country that helps vulnerable people. But actually, how can we call ourselves a safe country for refugees when we can't even protect our own children from getting stabbed in the streets? London, is London a safe place for refugees? I don't think it is, because the amount of people who get stabbed here every day. Yeah. Every hour, a rape is reported in London. Does that sound like a safe place to you? It doesn't to me. Oh. We have enough problems of our own to be dealing with before we go out helping the world. And that's the fundamental point here.
That's what I was laughing about before we started this interview. We got a little man Khan over in New York at the moment. Yeah. He's, what does he call it? Banging the drum for London. Yeah.
Making a fool of himself.
He's exploring the use of oysters to help clear up our River Thames. I swear to God.
He's a joke. Sadiq Khan is, and we've spoken about Sadiq Khan for many, many hours, and he is one of the prime examples of just a politician of the absolute lowest order, who is quite effective. He's a good speaker. He knows how to play the game, but he clearly doesn't have the best interests of Londoners at heart. No. If he did, he wouldn't be allowing people to stab and rape each other every single day.
Wouldn't be
he'd be enforcing the law,
exploring the use of oysters in New York right now while someone's getting stabbed, probably as we're speaking.
He'd be getting a handle on the chaos that is unfolding on the streets of this city that we see every day. Yeah, but he doesn't care.
There's a massive array of issues that he is responsible for while he's exploring the use of oysters in New York at the moment.
Cheers, Sadiq. Thanks, mate. London's never looked better.
So I think that is probably, by the time we wrap it up, we've covered a lot today, and we'll probably have Charlie on again soon anyway.
Yeah.
A regular.
I think Charlie should be a regular. I was saying that anyway. I do think so. I think Charlie should be a regular.
That's always fun. Always good. Yeah. Always refreshing.
Well, the coup in it, Charlie. I don't know if your punchline's going to be any different this time. Have you got something different this time?
Oh, no,
you got to do a punchline. Hey, come on.
Yeah, you're out there in the field, innit? So you probably something for us to hear about.
What your one was last time now. Fuck me. Yeah, my memory's gone a bit shy.
I think it was "We Are Inevitable." That was or something.
It was a short but powerful one. Yeah.
Try and make it about the British Empire.
Yeah, let's make it about the British Empire.
Okay.
Rule Britannia.
So this is my what do you call it? Like your statement or whatever.
The punch.
The mantra.
What was it again? Fucking forgot the word. Didn't it? The slogan. Was it slogan? Or
Something like. Let me just give this some thought for a moment. Hundreds of years ago, Britannia ruled the waves. And in the future that is rapidly approaching, Britannia will rule the stars.
I'm trying to go space out here.
Yeah.
Rule Britannia.
The intergalactic British Empire.
Ain't big enough, my G. Well, like I said, the population's increasing a bit too quick at the moment, so we need to look elsewhere.
Yes, the intergalactic British Empire.
Yeah, yes, and you know how you got to finish this up now.
You know the last thing you got to do.
Hey, come on.
Hey, come on.
Yes, Charlie.
That was rubbish.
That was good. It's good. Nice one. All right.
Boom. The opposition was definitely.